What's going on, gang? Welcome to the workbench. I was just doing a little bit of cleaning. Actually, not a little bit of cleaning, but quite a bit of cleaning, actually. More of a conservation on a very, very nice, all-original, early World War I Springfield 1903, which, once we do a reassembly, obviously we'll feature the whole thing, but kind of had a lot of thoughts in my head and decided, instead of keeping them in my head, it might be nice to put them on camera for posterity's sake. So doing some cleaning, and mostly what I've found so far, and failed to get before pictures, unfortunately, but it is what it is. But for the most part, what I've found is not anything huge or really nasty. A lot of dirt, grime, years and decades of neglect, so a lot of buildup of dirt and that sort of thing, but not really any red rust or pitting or anything, which for an old firearm, an old military rifle conservation, that's pretty much what you want to see. See a lot of dirt and grime from God knows where. Could have been from the battlefield, could have been from Bubba's shed. You just never know. But I always talk about the optimist in my collecting philosophy. I'm an optimist, so all of the dirt that I find on this rifle, I'm going to attribute to a World War I battlefield. We'll just go along with it. All right. So anyway. A lot of cool parts here, done for the most part a complete teardown, except for some really tiny pins and screws that would just be a real pain to get out, and for the most part an even bigger pain to get back in. So some tools of the trade: dental picks, Q-tips, hollow ground screwdrivers, standard stuff. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. And I'm not really here for, your education, because I'm sure most of y'all are pretty seasoned firearms collectors and cleaners and that sort of thing. But just more or less here hanging out, like, a couple of guys hanging out around a workbench, doing some conservation. But love Q-tips for little parts like, let me zoom in here. Little parts like floor plates and things like that. They've got nooks and crannies, so try to get in there and... these parts that have even deeper little crevices, we can get in there with the pick and run some gauze in there and just kind of go over it with the pick, making sure we're getting all the dirt out. Of course, if we leave a little bit in there, it's not the end of the world. And don't freak out about the patches and the Q-tips and the shop rags and towels and all that. As far as fibers go and leaving behind fibers, I'm not here to maintain a race gun or a competition gun or anything like that. These aren't, super highly machined masterpiece firearms here. There's a lot of tolerance in these parts, so I'm not worried about leaving dirt or leaving fibers or anything. But I like to clean up things as much as possible. Getting all the holes there on the stacking swivel, especially, and sling swivels and things like that. So not really removing any bluing or patina, just wiping away years of dirt and grime. So on tougher parts, I use little pieces of something called Big 45 Frontier, which I have quite a bit of here. This is not Scotch-Brite or steel wool or anything. This is a material, I want to say it's maybe zinc, that these fibers are made out of. So it's harder than rust and dirt, but not so hard that it will damage any original finish. So when I went out and bought that, I was a little skeptical, as you should be with any new product. Did a little bit of testing on some, less valuable firearms and things like that, and found that there was absolutely no finish loss or any finish damage. Even if you do like a quadruple aught steel wool or something, people always talk about removing rust and spots with quadruple aught steel wool and oil, and just doing a light massaging over the rust, and yeah, that'll get rid of the rust, but it'll maim the finish as well. Maybe not so much as far as your naked eye can see, but I can certainly tell you that with any sort of steel wool, any sort of abrasive material that's harder than the finish or harder than the bluing or the original steel, it's going to do some damage. So obviously always err on the side of caution. And you can see this big 45 Frontier does a really nice job. Just like to go over, the parts until they're smooth to the touch. Again, not removing any material or anything like that, just getting rid of that grime and if there's any rust there, and then we can wipe it free with a cloth. I have these I think it's medical gauze or cloth. I have a huge box of it, but it doesn't leave behind any fibers, and it's actually really nice for doing big conservation projects where I don't want to run through my shop towels or gun cleaning patches or anything like that. So we just get everything nice and smooth, get all the surface rust and dirt off of that, and yeah, we'll do a full reassembly video, I think, which will be separate from this one. But just while I was cleaning, had some thoughts, just wanted to get those out there. Screws for the wood. These are the sling swivel screws that would go into the stock like that. So we take everything down, at least I do. I like to just make sure everything is nice and clean. These screws look fine, but we're just going to go over with some Ballistol and make sure that they're lubricated. Ballistol is the collector's best friend. There's some other CLPs out there that are decent. There's one I like called Cleanse Oil that's really nice, doesn't gum up or anything, does a lot of the same things as Ballistol, but hey, when you're cleaning an old military weapon, Ballistol is, in my opinion, the way to go. Screw heads, we want to get in there, we don't want to be super abrasive with a dental pick or anything like that, so I like to cover it up with the patch or the cloth or something and get in there, make sure the screw heads are nice and clean, and then obviously the threads as well. Once these screws go back into the walnut stock, we want to make sure that they're basically set up for the next 100 years, because on a lot of these, at least this one for sure, and a lot of other ones that I've seen, they haven't been touched for 100 years or more, depending on what conflict we're talking about. All right, so just going through these screws again. There's not really any grime in that one, but we'll double check and just make sure. And again, we're just basically taking the screw, folding the cloth over, and then going through the screw head with the pick. Not really applying any real pressure, because we don't want to scratch the the screws. Even though it's just a screw, at least for me, I like to keep things as original and destruction free as at all possible. So we'll just keep going with the screws. These are the bigger ones that go into the butt plate. This one does have a little bit of surface rust on there, which we'll try to get loose. So stuff like that I just like to spray down, and then we'll take a nylon bristle brush and just kind of go through it like that, knock some of that surface rust off or dirt or whatever it is. The lighting in here is not super good, so I can't really show you exactly what kind of rust or dirt we're dealing with, so you'll just have to bear with me. But just going through the screw, knocking that off, and then we'll take our cloth and give it a few turns, and then you can see that dirt from those threads ends up on the cloth. This is kind of a new thing for me. I'd never thought I'd be filming a cleaning video, but just sitting out here in the gun room with my own thoughts, so I thought maybe some of y'all would enjoy hearing what I had to think. So anyway, more screws. And one of the big issues with disassembling and cleaning and reassembling a rifle like this is all these little screws and pins you got to kind of keep straight in your head as far as what they are, or what some other guys do that I've seen is map them out, draw out a diagram of the rifle, on a like a shop towel or something, or a paper towel, and then put each part where it corresponds to on the diagram. This is going to be the magazine cutoff for the 1903. You can see the letters are sans serif. They don't have the serifs on them, which is correct for a World War I era rifle. And I guess while we're on the subject, I'm just kind of wiping this down. There's a little bit of dirt on the backside. While we're on the subject of World War Springfield 1903s. I'll just mention that it's actually really difficult to find all correct original World War I examples. There's a lot of, well, not a lot, but it's not quite as hard to find pre-war examples. Ones that, you know, ended up in guard units or guard duty or training rifles, things of that nature. But when war broke out in late 1917 and into 1918, basically every 1903 that was on hand was going to the war effort, especially with, you know, the Ordnance Department green lighting the M1917. So things were pretty dire. We weren't making as many rifles as we needed to. And there's some dirt there. We're going to hit that with the big 45. So give it a little bit of lube, even though, as I said, the abrasives on the big 45 Frontier are not so harsh that they'll damage the finish. But I do still like to give it a little bit of lube anyway, just to be on the safe side. So just kind of getting in there and cleaning things up a little bit. This might turn out to be a long video, so if that's not your thing, I apologize. But we'll call that good. Give it a good wipe down. Go through the holes with the Q-tip again. And yeah, that's going to be just fine. Always good to keep a little trash can nearby. I've got a little trash can that's overflowing because I never take it out when I should. Alright, what should we do next? Let's go ahead and hit the, let's see, what pin is this? Oh, this one this is the retaining screw for the magazine cutoff. A lot of little bits and bobs, guys. And actually, you know what? I'm probably not going to really do anything on this. Maybe just give it a wipe down and call it good. And we'll get into the action screws. As I was saying, some of these parts can get mixed up pretty easily, so I've actually found that to be the worst on Arisaka rifles, Japanese Type 38s and 99s. Those retarded little screws get everywhere, and it's such a pain in the butt keeping them all straight. Because you'll reassemble a rifle with screws in the wrong place, and it'll work out for you for a little bit because the screws are just similar enough. But when it comes time to put in that last screw, the one that you put in 30 minutes prior in the wrong spot, then you realize that you screwed up and you got to disassemble the entire rifle. Screw heads are all right on that one. So if you guys got any tips, firearm cleaning tips, by all means. I always say I'm not an expert on anything, so I'm sure there's stuff that I could learn, that maybe tips and tricks that y'all have, especially some of you guys that have been doing it for longer than I have. I'd love to hear your thoughts. These action screws I try to get real clean, especially because I don't want any issues with over tightening or under tightening and recoil lug setback or stress cracks behind the tang or anything like that. So when it comes to action screws, I try not to play around too much. Here's our retaining pin for the magazine cutoff. It would go in the big hole like that, and then the set screw would lock it in place. And here in a minute I'll show y'all, once I get done with these little bits, I'll show y'all the action of the rifle. So we're getting there. There's not a whole lot left to do. May fast forward some of this stuff if it gets a little too tedious. But we're stripped down all the way down to butt plates and even butt plate components and things like that. You know, at least as far as I can tell, things are dirty. I like to get it down that far. We'll save this for a little bit later. That's going to be a pain in the butt. Some screw heads could use a little bit of cleaning here. But yeah, as I said, we might fast forward a little bit of this and skip to the end and then do a completely different reassembly video. there's some pretty stubborn dirt in there. We'll hit it with the Ballistol. Just a little dab, because that stuff goes a long way. All right, so I think we're going to pull out of the fast forwarding for a second, and I'm going to do something a little more drastic for the butt plate. I don't know if this is going to show up, but we're dealing with some, under the wood, we're dealing with some pretty severe rust on there. So we're going to try to knock as much of that off as possible. And, we have different options when we talk about abrasives and rust removal. 3 different categories, at least in most cleaning circles. Your steel wire brushes, your copper or brass wire brushes, and then your nylon brushes. So in order of most to least abrasive, there you go. We always try to err on the side of caution, so I mostly deal with the nylon or a good toothbrush or what have you. But sometimes when we're dealing with, rust issues like I just showed you, we gotta kick it up just one more notch. Probably won't go to the steel bristle brush, but the brass or the copper bristles are going to probably do the best for this rust removal on this butt plate. And these are another, this is another part that's got a lot of nooks and crannies, so it can be a challenge. That's why all your brushes are going to end up looking like that, more or less, just ugly. But luckily these things are cheap at your local hardware store or wherever. So we got a nice chocolate milk looking coating of crap on there, which is probably good. If I had to guess, this is going to clean up okay. More or less smooth to the touch. There's a couple of rough areas. I'll make sure to get the comb area. There we go. So, all right, let's see how we did. Not great, but, luckily, I don't know if we're going to have to hit this again. Probably not. No, I don't think so. Yeah, we've gotten rid of most of the active red rust, being under the wood line. Let's be honest, these things probably weren't that attractive to begin with. And if we go ahead and take a look at the actual wood on this guy, you can see it's not the cleanest either. So we've got, issues with dirt, and that's just flaking off with pressure from my finger. So yeah, some of that dirt and rust is just flaking off. That's fine. I'm not too much concerned about the butt plate area here. That wood's going to be just fine. I'm not worried about that. The screw hole area, maybe we could clean that up a little bit. grab a clean Q-tip. Oh yeah, look at that. That is disgusting. Let's go ahead and hit that again. Ballistol is generally okay for wood. I'm not a huge fan. We'll get into some more issues of wood conservation. I'm really not a huge fan of anything on wood. Even my USGI wood furniture, which, you know, a lot of people swear by raw linseed oil or boiled linseed oil or tung oil or, you know, all those sorts of things. In my opinion, just leave it. Things are only original once. And then I can hear the guys in the back row shouting, well, if you're worried about it being original, then why are you cleaning the dirt off of it? Well, there's a fine line when we talk about cleaning and conservation versus restoration, right? I think we're all smart enough to understand the difference. So active rust, not a good thing. And let's clean up the end just a little bit. I know I said I was going to leave it alone, but it's just staring at me in the face. So anyway, Ballistol, yeah, generally good for wood furniture. I would not soak it by any means. I would not soak my wood in Ballistol, but a light coat just for cleaning. And in fact, that's exactly what we're going to do on this one here in just a second. I'll leave it naked for the reassembly video, but in just a second, we're going to go over this with a coat of Ballistol just to get, yeah, you see some of that dirt's already coming off just with a light wipe. So let's just go ahead and do that now. I think most of our metal components are clean. I did the bolt and magazine box and all that. I did that off camera, but trust me, it's good to go. So just do a light wipe down of the stock. Nothing major. I'm not going to do linseed oil. I'm not going to do varnish. Oh, there's a little chip there in the wood. That's not good. I should have been more careful with that. Not going to do linseed oil or obviously varnish or anything crazy. We're just doing a little wipe down just to get the dirt off. The oils is not such a big deal on American collectible firearms as it is with, say, German or Japanese that used very specific oil finishes and in some cases no finish whatsoever on their wood, especially when we talk about the late war, you know, German rifles that were basically just naked. So when we talk about those, it's a matter of finding stocks that are oiled that shouldn't be, or oiled that are, you know, that have turned the wrong color. Yeah, because believe it or not, certain oils will affect the color of the wood. So generally, the oils on the USGI stuff, look how beautiful that is. Just American black walnut, has a beautiful reddish tint to it, which is a byproduct of the raw linseed oil, which was originally used. So when you hear collectors refer to wiping their stocks with boiled linseed oil, stop them and tell them that's not correct. It was actually raw. The raw linseed oil is what gives you that natural red tone over time, which is what we all love to see on our USGI military firearms. So that looks good to go. The sheen will die down. Military rifles are not supposed to be shiny. I know this. The Ballistol will evaporate, you know, in a couple hours, and it'll be nice and matte colored again, but just a beautiful, beautiful stock. Can't wait to do a full feature on this particular rifle. And we'll do the same thing on the handguard. Using our same rag. It's already got Ballistol on it. And again, we're not doing anything too crazy here. The wood on this rifle is already super, super clean. Actually, let's hit it with some more Ballistol. Yeah, the wood was super duper clean. I was very happy to find this one. We'll go through all the parts and stuff in a later video. But if you've been watching these last couple of videos on the 1903s, I'm super psyched on these right now. I kind of go through periods of, levels of interest of different things, whether it be German or Japanese, British or Soviet or American. I kind of get off on a kick of certain things. So I end up collecting, a lot of the same, I guess you could call it, genre of rifles. Like this year I've gotten a couple 1903s and a Garand and the 1911 and that sort of thing, but I haven't gotten anything. Well, no, I'll take it back. I've gotten one German item, but the rest have been, for the most part, the rest have been American. So anyway, just a kind of an interesting collecting note. But we're gonna call this good. We're gonna do a reassembly in a separate video. But if you enjoy this kind of stuff, let me know. Like I said, we're not we're not reinventing the wheel here or really doing anything that you're probably not used to doing yourself at home. But if you've enjoyed it, let me know. Maybe we'll do some more in the future. But stick around for more 1903 videos, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Oops, realized as soon as I stopped rolling that I forgot to pay off on the barreled action part of the video that I promised I would throw in there. So here we go. Springfield Armory, model 1903. You see there's some corrosion issues there on the receiver ring. Doesn't bother me too much when you're talking about a war as brutal and conditions as brutal as the ones in World War I. Things like that are bound to be expected. And especially when it comes on a rifle that I believe is all original. You take what you can get, and there's some beautiful bluing underneath that just shines through, which is outstanding. Serial number just under 800,000. So when we talk about the double heat treat method of heat treating these rifles, some of y'all are familiar with that. Usually we talk about under 800,000 serial number range is considered, or I'm sorry, over 800,000 would be considered quote unquote safe to shoot. That's a separate issue I'll get into in another video, but it's actually not 800,000. It's just a slightly under 800,000. And so this would have been one of the very first rifles with the double heat treat process, which makes it pretty special. And the way that we can tell that is by the heat lock code on the bolt, which is C8. So that would have been a double heat treated bolt. Straight turn down bolt handle. Finish that's consistent with the overall rifle itself, lending me to believe, and especially with the dirt and grime that we've already seen, the type of dirt, and when I say type, I mean the areas and the nooks and crannies of these different parts. It's consistent throughout when you're cleaning these. You find more or less a consistent level of dirt and grime. So basically, what I'm saying is I don't believe this bolt was swapped out. Or if it was swapped out a long time ago. But being right in the serial number range and consistent in appearance, and it looks, if you guys have an eye for this stuff, you can just tell it kind of looks the part, right? So it's right there in the serial date range. It's right there as far as the period and the correctness. Being a double heat treated bolt, I do believe this is one of the very first double heat treated rifles as well. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. Hope you'll stick around for more. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.